What's going on, everybody? With 2016 wrapping up, I wanted to do a retrospective of the entire year in terms of Guns N' Roses news and all the notable events that happened and what we can look forward to in 2017. So we can't really talk about 2016 without looking back a couple of years ago when Guns N' Roses were doing some tours around 2014. So why I'm talking about 2014 is this is really what kickstarted the Guns N' Roses reunion. Guns were doing a bunch of shows in South America. They also had a stint at the Joint they were doing. They'd played the Joint in Vegas, I think a couple of years prior to that. They had a residency there. And then, of course, they played a couple of dates in North America, most notably at the Golden God Awards as well. So as you guys know, Duff Mckagan actually filled in for bassist Tommy Stinson, who was playing with the Replacements. Guns N' Roses had booked the tour, but Tommy was already going to be playing with the Replacements, so they were kind of in dire need of a bassist, and he suggested Duff Mckagan fill in, and that's how Duff rejoined the band in 2014 for a short stint. Now, there were a couple dates that Tommy was able to play with Guns N' Roses, including the Rock on the Range show in Columbus and the Bethlehem show, but pretty much all the other shows, Duff Mckagan kind of stood in, and this is where the speculation of a Guns N' Roses reunion really started. And 2014 didn't really see a lot of other Guns N' Roses news, but there were some really important events that led to the reunion, including Slash splitting with his wife Perla Hudson, with whom he'd been married for 14 years prior and had 2 children. And, it was well speculated that Axl hated his second wife, largely because Perla was Slash's manager, and they probably had to deal with one another through intermediaries when it came to any old Guns N' Roses related items. 2014 also saw the announcement of some things that maybe people didn't think of on the surface meant a lot, but actually meant a lot behind the scenes in terms of starting a dialogue between Axl and Slash. So with Duff back in the band for a short period of time, he was able to talk to Axl and sort out some of the misunderstandings that had happened between the ex-band members. And basically, Guns N' Roses filmed their concerts at the Joint in Vegas in 2014, and they actually put out a DVD called Appetite for Democracy, which required Slash to sign off on in order for Guns N' Roses to actually put that DVD out. And Slash likewise filmed the concert at the Roxy in LA, where Axl needed to sign off on. So these little small gestures sort of, kickstarted the dialogue and the first steps of the Guns N' Roses reunion. And then 2015, the dominoes began to fall. Bumblefoot had originally quit in 2014 from Guns N' Roses, but he hadn't officially announced it till 2015. There was a lot of secrecy around it, but he was out of the band. And then summer 2015, DJ Ashba announces that he's leaving too to focus more on 6 a.m. And basically, Axl was without 2 guitarists. Richard Fortus was still in the band as far as anybody knew, but he didn't have a replacement guitarist. And then shortly around the same time, Tommy Stinson ended up leaving the band too. He just I guess it kind of came out after the reunion that he had left the band at some point, and really after the Vegas shows, there was no plan left with the band in terms of what was going to come after in 2014. And then Slash did an interview with a Swedish news outlet where he was basically asked about making friends again with Axl Rose, and Slash didn't deny it. He said he was probably way overdue, and then he basically was asked, will there be a Guns N' Roses reunion? And he basically didn't want to talk about it. He asked for the next question. He said, I can't answer that. Let's get off the subject because that's an old one. And what's interesting is a couple months prior, Slash was interviewed on CBS Morning News, and he even said all the negative energy between him and Axl and some of the other band members is really no longer there. So this should have really come on people's radar a lot more than it did. But I've linked to these interviews down below if you guys want to go check them out. And then around Christmas time of last year, there was starting to see rumors of a Guns N' Roses reunion. There was rumors flying that they were going to reunite for Coachella, do a possible stadium tour. They were going to be charging upwards of $250 to $275 per show for the tickets. Of course, that wasn't far off. And they were going to be making about $3 million per show. And of course, none of this was confirmed. It wasn't until a following week later that people who went to go see the new Star Wars movie ended up seeing a really strange trailer with basically a live crowd and a live version of Welcome to the Jungle being sung. And there was really nothing else in the trailer to suggest anything other than, a major Guns N' Roses announcement coming. So if you guys want to see that trailer, I've linked to it down below. But this kind of set the groundwork for a major announcement that was coming in the following weeks. And then, of course, early January, it's announced that Guns will be headlining Coachella for both weekends. And what's interesting about the news release is that they only mentioned Slash, Duff, and Axl a lot of fans were wondering, okay, who else is in the band? Are they bringing Matt Sorum back? Is Steven Adler involved? Is Izzy involved? There was all these rumors flying in terms of who's actually in the lineup of Guns N' Roses. And of course, we didn't really find out until the first show that Guns played, which was a surprise gig at the Troubadour on April 1st. It was coincidentally enough April Fool's Day earlier this year. And then even hours before the show, Guns N' Roses fans were wondering who's going to play drums. There was a mysterious photo tweeted on the Guns N' Roses social media pages showing just some Ahead drumsticks, which many thought were Matt Sorum's because he used to use Ahead drumsticks back on the Use Your Illusion tour, but he no longer plays with them. And it turned out to be, it was actually Frank's drumsticks. We also had radio host Eddie Trunk, prior to the actual first reunion show, speculate that Frank Ferrar was going to be the drummer for most of the tour, and that Steven Adler would make appearances here and there. And then earlier in the year, on January 9th, Matt Sorum was actually interviewed by TMZ at LAX airport about whether he was going to be drumming for Guns N' Roses' announced shows at Coachella, but he remained very tight-lipped. He didn't even say anything to the paparazzis. But as you guys know, of course, it came true that Frank was actually going to be the drummer for most of the tour, and Steven Adler would make appearances here and there. Now, what's interesting is the same night that Guns N' Roses were playing the Troubadour, Steven Adler's cover band was supposed to be playing a show at the Whiskey A Go-Go, but apparently it was canceled, and a lot of people speculated that Steven was actually going to show up at the Troubadour gig, which he didn't. It turned out he had recently had back surgery and had to cancel the gig. So Guns N' Roses hit the stage at the Troubadour. They went on pretty late, around midnight, and it was only several hundred people in the actual venue, including some really well-known celebrities, including Lenny Kravitz. There was Kate Hudson. There was Bradley Cooper, who was with his mother. And Guns N' Roses played through about 17 songs. And the biggest surprise of the night was that there were some Chinese Democracy songs thrown in, including the title track and the song Better. And of course, this would be a little glimpse of the songs that we would see them play on tour in the coming months. Now, tickets at the Troubadour gig were only $10. And they had actually set up a merch stand outside Tower Records, and there were huge lineups throughout the day, and people trying to come in and get tickets. And, you know, cell phones weren't actually even allowed into the venue. There's very little cell phone footage from the gig. There's been some pro shop footage made available by the band, and it wasn't known to people at the time, but during the second song in, Guns were doing Mr. Brownstone, Axl fell. He actually ended up breaking his foot, and fans wouldn't learn of the actual injury until a couple days before their first few shows in Vegas at the new T-Mobile Arena. So the new lineup included Slash, Duff, Axl, Richard Fortus, who had been previously in Axl's version of the band, and Frank Ferrar on drums. But interestingly enough, we had a new member that Guns N' Roses fans weren't familiar with, which was Melissa Reese. The previous second keyboardist, Chris Pittman, had went on Twitter, social media, and had bashed the reunion. And apparently that's the reason he got kicked out from the band. Now, before the Troubadour gig was even announced, Izzy Stradlin ended up putting out a statement because there was a lot of rumors he was going to be involved with the reunion. Early March, he put out a statement to Rolling Stone basically saying he has no involvement with any announced Guns N' Roses shows in April, which he was referring to the Coachella and the Vegas dates. And then Izzy followed this statement up a couple months down the road saying that the other members just didn't want to share the money equally, which led to him not partaking in the reunion. And interestingly enough, a couple days before the Vegas shows, Axl Rose's doctor actually put out a statement. It was actually a video discussing Axl's injury and what they were doing to fix it. And a lot of people wondered, is the tour in jeopardy? Is Axl going to be sitting down? And what happened was a year before, when Foo Fighters were touring in Europe, Dave Grohl broke his leg. They had a special stage throne made for him so he could sit down and perform. And, you know, there was a long-standing feud between Dave Grohl and Axl Rose dating back to the Nirvana days. Apparently they'd patched things up, and Dave Grohl actually lent Axl his stage throne, which Axl used during the gigs in Vegas, as well as during the Coachella gigs as well. And then not only that, but Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins were both spotted at one of Guns N' Roses shows they played in Vegas, where Axl debuted the throne. And then later on, Axl went on social media and actually thanked Dave Grohl personally for lending him the throne, and thanked Dave Grohl's daughter as well for letting her dad come to the gig. And then just before the actual shows in Las Vegas, Guns N' Roses had announced their Not in This Lifetime tour, which would span 20 cities, including a bunch of shows at the bigger cities in the U.S., doing stadiums, and a couple shows in Mexico as well. And then the Not in This Lifetime quote actually comes from an interview Axl did with TMZ back in 2012. He was asked whether Guns N' Roses would be doing a full reunion, and he said, "Not in this lifetime." And then, around late March, just before Guns played Coachella, Axl was spotted in Atlanta with the band members from AC/DC because Brian Johnson was having to leave the AC/DC tour due to his hearing problems. And it was around the time of Coachella that it was officially announced that Axl was going to be filling in for Brian Johnson for the remaining tour dates they had across Europe. And Angus Young actually came on stage during Coachella and joined Guns N' Roses for one of the weekends for a couple of AC/DC covers they did. And then throughout the month of May and June, Axl ended up joining AC/DC for a bunch of European tour dates. He was in the Dave Grohl chair for some of the concerts until he was able to get out of the chair and then play with his cast on. He was a little bit more mobile during those concerts. Now, when the announcement came that Axl was going to be replacing Brian Johnson, most fans were disappointed, angry, and upset, with a lot of fans demanding refunds over their tickets. Now, Axl was able to prove the critics wrong, putting on great shows, great performances, and a lot of the critics who had first questioned whether Axl would be up to actually replacing Brian Johnson were soon silenced, and even a lot of fans felt the same way too, and even a lot of Axl Rose's peers in the music industry as well. Then he returned to Guns N' Roses in the month of June throughout August. They played a bunch of stadiums in the U.S. The shows went well. There weren't really any big riots or rants or any kind of late starts. Guns went on time. They were very professional, and things didn't seem to represent or weren't very reminiscent of the past tours Guns had done, especially with Slash and Axl in the band. And even Steven Adler found time to show up to some of the gigs in North America, as well as play a couple dates in Argentina as part of the South America tour. Now, Steven would only play a couple songs for whatever gigs he showed up at, including My Michelle and Out to Get Me, but he was obviously back from his back surgery, and he was actually seen performing live a 2-hour set with a cover band in Argentina. Now, once Guns N' Roses' summer tour ended in late August, AC/DC announced another set of tour dates in the U.S. They were rescheduled U.S. tour dates. So throughout the month of September, Axl will be playing with AC/DC, and then Guns N' Roses announced a South America tour for the month of late October through pretty much the whole month of November to finish off 2016. And then just before the year end, Guns N' Roses announced they've already got plans for 2017. They're going to be doing 35 new dates, 36 probably if you include the new UK date they added, across North America, including Canada and the US, and a bunch of European tour dates as well, in addition to the dates they already announced for the South Pacific, including Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, and Japan. And of course, Axl did a number of high-profile interviews this year. He was on BBC Radio with AC/DC to talk about how he got the gig and the new lineup, which I've linked to down below. And of course, he did a Guns N' Roses interview with Brazilian television with Duff Mckagan back in September, late August-ish. So I've linked to both those interviews for you guys to go check out. And I've got one last piece of news to leave you guys with before I wrap it up. Now, 2016 was a great year to be a Guns N' Roses fan. 2017 is probably going to be another great year to be a Guns N' Roses fan. There's rumors that there may be some new music we're hearing. We've already heard that Axl has shown Slash and Duff some of the songs he's been working on. And we've also got some rumors from Mick Wall, who wrote the new Guns N' Roses book, Last of the Giants, that they're working on original material as well. So it still remains to be seen. And AC/DC's future is still up in the air as well. So no clue as to whether Axl's still going to be fronting the band or whether AC/DC is going to call it quits. So that's my retrospective at the year that was the year of Guns N' Roses. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what was your favorite moment of the year. And as always, guys, make sure you subscribe for the latest Guns N' Roses news. Take care.